Debt feels like a modern invention. We think of banks, credit cards, mortgages, interest rates, and monthly payments. But more than 3,000 years ago, people were already borrowing, paying interest, losing property, and becoming trapped by debts they could not repay. Ancient merchants recorded loans on clay tablets. Farmers borrowed grain before planting season. Traders borrowed silver to finance long journeys. Families borrowed food simply to survive a bad harvest.
It is the tablet of laws.
And ancient rulers discovered something shocking. If debt was allowed to grow without limits, it did not only destroy individual borrowers. It could weaken the army, empty the countryside, concentrate land in a few hands, and threaten the survival of the entire kingdom. Their solution was a debt rule that many people today have almost forgot. Debt had to serve society. Society could not be allowed to become the servant of debt. Before banks, there were clay tablets. In ancient Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, money did not always mean coins. A farmer might borrow barley. A merchant might borrow silver by weight. A family might receive seed, livestock, tools, or food with a promise to return more later. The agreement could be pressed into wet clay with a reed stylus. The tablet recorded what was borrowed when it had to be returned and who witnessed the deal. The system could be useful. A farmer needed seed before the harvest produced income. A trader needed goods before a distant journey produced profit. A temple or palace needed workers and supplies before taxes arrived. Credit helped ancient cities function. But the same system contained a dangerous trap. The future was uncertain. Number how an ordinary farmer became trapped. Imagine a farmer living outside an ancient city. His family depends on one field. He must plant at the right time, maintain irrigation channels, pay taxes, feed his children, and save enough grain for the next season. Then the river changes course. The crop fails. Or soldiers pass through the region and take part of the harvest. Or officials demand taxes before the grain is ready. The farmer still has to eat, so he borrows barley from a wealthy landowner, merchant, temple, or palace official. He promises to repay after the next harvest. But the next harvest is weak. Now he owes the original grain plus interest. He borrows again to repay the first loan. Then he pledges his livestock. After the livestock is gone, he pledges his field. And when the land is no longer enough, the debt reaches his family. This was the darkest side of ancient borrowing. Debt could move from a tablet into a person's life. When debt costs more than money,
Look how healthy this
in the
barley
ancient
is.
world, default could
Best
have
crop
severe
we've had in
consequences.
years. You earned it,
A debtor
honey.
might lose crops, animals, tools, or land. In some cases, the debtor or members of the family could enter debt servitude. They were not always permanent slaves in the same way as war captives, but their labor could be claimed because of an unpaid obligation. The debt that began with a bag of grain could end with a family losing freedom. The Code of Hammurabi shows how real this danger was. One law describes a debtor giving himself, his wife, his son, or his daughter into service. It also limits that service to 3 years, with freedom restored in the 4th. That law did not end debt bondage, but it showed that rulers understood the problem had become serious enough to control. Why would a powerful king care about a poor farmer's debt? Because the king eventually discovered that private debt could become a public disaster. The problem that threatened the kingdom. At first, rising debt could make creditors richer. They gained grain, animals, labor, and land. But as more families lost their farms, the kingdom began to weaken. A farmer without land could not easily support the palace with crops. A man trapped in debt service might not be available for military duty. A family that lost everything might flee the region. Fields could be abandoned. Irrigation systems could decay. Tax revenue could fall. The creditor might win, but the king could lose. Ancient rulers needed free farmers, workers, taxpayers, and soldiers. They could not allow every bad harvest to transfer more of the kingdom into the hands of a small group of powerful creditors. This created a conflict between two kinds of power. Creditors wanted contracts enforced. Kings wanted the kingdom preserved. And sometimes, the king decided that preserving society was more important than collecting every debt. The ancient Clean-Slate. Some Mesopotamian rulers issued royal decrees that released certain debts and restored people who had fallen into debt bondage. Different languages used different terms for these acts of restoration. The words could carry meanings connected to freedom, justice, release, or the restoration of order. Today, these decrees are often described as clean slates. But they were not simple giveaways. And they did not usually erase every obligation in the economy. Commercial loans between merchants could remain valid. Debts involving normal business trade were often treated differently. The main target was frequently personal debt connected to taxes, farming, basic survival, and arrears owed to powerful institutions. The goal was not to destroy credit. The goal was to stop credit from destroying the population. Why a king would cancel debt? A new ruler might announce a debt release after taking the throne. Another might act after war, famine, disorder, or economic crisis. The decree could cancel certain arrears, free debt servants, and return some property that had been lost. This made the king appear merciful. But mercy was only part of the reason. The decision was also practical. The ruler needed farmers back on the land. He needed families producing food. He needed men available for public work and military service. He needed villages strong enough to pay future taxes. If creditors took everything today, the palace might receive nothing tomorrow. Debt cancellation could therefore protect the state itself. The king was not simply rescuing borrowers from creditors. He was rescuing the kingdom from a financial system that had become too successful at collecting. The secret was balance. This is the ancient secret. Debt was useful, but only while it remained limited. Credit helped people plant crops, move goods, and survive difficult seasons. But when interest and penalties grew faster than people's ability to pay, debt stopped supporting the economy. It began consuming it. Ancient rulers understood that a contract could be legal and still become dangerous to the kingdom. They understood that collecting everything owed was not always the same as creating prosperity. A creditor could seize a field and become richer. But if thousands of fields were seized, the social order could collapse. The real question was not only, does the borrower owe this money? The deeper question was, what happens to the whole kingdom if we collect it? Number debt was about power. Debt has never been only about numbers. It is a relationship between someone who needs resources now and someone who controls those resources. The lender can wait. The desperate borrower often cannot. That difference creates power. A farmer facing starvation may accept terms that he would reject after a good harvest. A family facing a tax demand may promise future labor because there is no other choice. A merchant with several ships can survive one failed journey. A small farmer may not survive one failed season. Ancient creditors understood this. Ancient rulers understood it too. That is why debt rules were also rules about land, labor, freedom, and political control. Whoever controlled the debt could influence the future of the debtor. And whoever controlled enough debtors could challenge the power of the king. The same warning appeared again. The idea that society needed protection from permanent debt did not disappear with the ancient Mesopotamian kingdoms. Later legal and religious traditions also developed rules about debt release, limits on servitude, protection of family land, and restoration. The details were different from place to place. Not every law was followed perfectly. Not every release happened on a fixed schedule. But the same fear remained. If debt became permanent, a temporary crisis could divide society into two groups. A small class that owned claims on everything, and a much larger class that worked only to repay the past. The ancient world knew that this was politically dangerous and morally difficult. Why the secret was forgotten. Modern people often imagine ancient societies as financially simple. But they kept detailed records. They calculated interest. They used contracts, witnesses, collateral, repayment dates, and legal penalties. Their systems could be highly organized. What feels unfamiliar is not the existence of debt. What feels unfamiliar is the idea that rulers sometimes openly interrupted debt collection to protect society. Today, debt is often treated as a private promise between a borrower and a lender. If the borrower cannot pay, the failure is usually described as personal. The ancient view could be wider. It asked whether crop failure, war, taxation, or a broken economic system had made repayment impossible for thousands of people at once. When an entire population could not pay, ancient rulers understood that the problem might not be thousands of individual failures. It might be one system-wide failure. The difference between business debt and survival debt. Ancient clean slates were not normally a declaration that every contract was meaningless. Rulers still needed merchants. They still needed trade. They still needed lenders willing to provide silver and goods. If every commercial loan disappeared without warning, credit could stop completely. So rulers often distinguished between debts that supported normal business and debts that were destroying ordinary families. This distinction matters. A merchant borrowing silver for a profitable trade journey was taking a business risk. A farmer borrowing food after a flood was trying to remain alive. Both were debts, but they were not socially identical. The ancient debt secret was not that repayment never mattered. It was that context mattered. Purpose mattered. Power mattered. And the survival of society mattered. Could this system be abused? Of course. A borrower might hope for a future cancellation.
We won't let you down.
A creditor might try to hide a loan from the decree. Officials might protect friends. Powerful people could manipulate records. A king could announce relief mainly to gain loyalty. Ancient debt releases were not perfect solutions. They did not remove poverty, inequality, crop failure, or political corruption. And because the same pressures returned, rulers sometimes had to issue new releases later. Critics might say that this proved the policy failed. But repeated relief can also reveal something else. The forces creating mass debt never disappeared. Bad harvests continued. Taxes continued. Interest continued. Families continued to face emergencies. The clean slate was not a permanent cure. It was a reset that prevented the damage from becoming irreversible. What the ancient world understood. The ancient world understood a truth that modern societies still struggle with. Debt can create growth. It can also create dependence. It can finance trade. It can also transfer land and power from the weak to the strong. It can rescue a family during a crisis. It can also turn that crisis into years of lost freedom. The effect depends on the terms, the purpose of the loan, the ability to repay, and the power held by each side. Debt is most dangerous when people borrow for survival, when interest continues during disaster, and when losing the loan means losing the tools needed to earn a living. Taking a farmer's field may help settle yesterday's account, but it can also destroy his ability to produce tomorrow's harvest.
Very well.
The modern echo. Today, most people are not borrowing barley on clay tablets. They use credit cards, personal loans, mortgages, medical financing, business credit, and digital payment systems. The contracts are different. The institutions are different. The consequences are usually different. But the ancient question remains. When does useful credit become destructive debt? When does repayment strengthen responsibility, and when does it prevent recovery? When does a lender deserve protection, and when does a whole society need relief? There is no single answer for every loan. But the ancient rulers left us a warning. A financial system cannot remain healthy if it collects more than the population can continue producing. At some point, a debt problem becomes a farming problem, a family problem, a business problem, a political problem, and finally a problem for everyone. Number the secret hidden in plain sight. The debt secret was never a magic formula for avoiding payment. It was a rule for protecting civilization. Do not let short-term claims destroy long-term production. Do not let one bad season become permanent servitude. Do not let creditors become so powerful that free citizens, farmers, and soldiers disappear. And do not confuse the successful collection of debt with the success of the kingdom. Ancient rulers learned that sometimes the strongest act was not to demand everything. It was to restore balance before the system collapsed. Conclusion.
Just give us the green.
More than 3,000 years ago, people already understood loans, interest, collateral, default, and debt bondage. They also understood something deeper. When it spreads through an entire society, it becomes a question of power and survival. The ancient clean slate did not erase every loan. It did not reward every careless borrower. It targeted the debts that were removing farmers from their land, families from their homes, and workers from the service of the kingdom. The rulers who ordered these releases were not rejecting finance. They were protecting the future from the demands of the past. That is the ancient debt secret hidden in plain sight. Debt must remain a tool. The moment people, land, and government exist only to feed it, the tool has become the master. And when debt becomes the master, even the richest kingdom can begin to fall.